This time I'd like to call to order a special meeting of the Genoa Township Board of Trustees. It is 8:30 a.m., October 21st, 2021. Purpose of today's meeting is to continue discussions on the appropriations for 2022. And we'll be dealing primarily with police and fire today. So at this time, roll call. Yeah, roll call.
Ms. Vaughn?
Here.
Ms. Goodman?
Here.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Here. This time, I'll lead us in Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. At this time, we have one item of business that we're just going to get out of the way before we get into the budget. And that's the motion to approve the 21-22 general liability insurance renewal. I will move to approve the 2021 general liability insurance renewal and authorize a purchase order to Reinhardt Walters Danner Insurance in the amount of $82,369 for the 21-22 general liability insurance effective November 1st, 2021 through October 31st, 2022. Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. I do understand from Mr. Wise, this liability insurance, there is an increase, approximately 3%.
Yes.
Paul, do you want to explain anything more?
Yes, I just want to talk about the increase is a slight 3% increase. Claims have been, property damage claims have been flat. So the increase is due to cost of insurance A, and then covering the township on some claims that we've had. And secondly, the part of the increase this year, after speaking with the fiscal office, we're buying a cyber coverage now on liability. We have been vulnerable a couple times in the past year where we've been others have tried to hack into our township system through payrolls and through our bank accounts. And after speaking with fiscal, Pat and Donna, I think it's a time now that for a minimal, it's $1 million policy to cover the township for $3,000. I think it's money well spent. When you have a company that has a certificate out there around $42 million, it's a good coverage to cover the township. So I added that in this year to our policy. And also, there's been some property increases with our equipment, et cetera. I know we've upgraded some of our safety forces, and the values of those have gone up compared to past. And also Bob's added inventory this year. I know he added the Venmo, which is around $42,000. He has a case excavator. It's either a cat or a case excavator. Is around $80,000. And about a $20,000 loader to carry that. So all these items, the cost of insurance goes up for those types of things. So
Is the new police building on the last policy?
it was
The new police building, was that on the previous policy, or is this a new addition to this one?
It was on the previous policy. It was added. We had builder's risk that covered us up until the end of January, and then coverage started in February, or whenever we got our occupancy for it, it began. So Most of last year it was on the policy.
Just one check, all right?
Yep.
As we add amenities for our parks, will those increase this policy also, like our new pickleball courts and the ninja style course?
Yeah, we'll add those on. We'll make changes to, usually the parks in general are covered.
Okay.
And any structures on it. Like we're covered blanket-wise for the playground equipment. So typically there's not a whole township-wide loss of equipment, but we have coverage that covers those types of things that are itemized. And then every year we have a risk manager come out and look at all the equipment to make sure we have adequate coverage, et cetera, on those, and look for risks that we don't see.
Okay. Thank you.
With going with the county IT, do they cover any cyber security stuff?
They have the fail-safes in our network that are working, but in case there's some kind of other hack, like to the UAN system that Donna uses, which isn't part of the county, or I know, I've heard of other entities trying to hack into our copiers because those are now on some kind of a network also that can be hacked. So we're just trying to cover all ends on that cybersecurity, and we've never had a cybersecurity policy here. We've had the minimum coverages, but I think having $1 million coverage in case we do have some kind of a ransomware or something that comes up, it protects us.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? Not, roll call?
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Paul, you want to kick us off? Or are we having one each? Who's going first?
I'm going to ask these guys who's prepared to begin.
They're both prepared.
They're both prepared.
Joe, go ahead.
Excuse me. Good morning, Board. Hopefully you've had a chance to review the documents that we've supplied to you for the 2022, excuse me, proposed budget. As we were generally speaking before the meeting, there is really not much exciting as far as major changes or proposed increases in the 2022 budget. Actually, in some areas, you'll probably see some decreases where we've gone through and thinned our proposed budget for next year. And part of that is due to the year that we've had in 2021 so far, dealing with COVID and employees being out due to contracting COVID and the costs associated with that. And we also have several personnel that are out on various types of leave that we've been having to cover shortages in staffing. So basically where that has put us at is we are over our hours this year that we thought we would be at for what we call manpower shortages. That's for us to cover when personnel are out for any reason. But we've had a large amount of shortages that we had to cover this year, which has affected us basically in what we're going to be able to carry over into next year. I project that we'll be in the positive at the end of the year, but we won't be where we wanted to be because of all the difficulties that we've experienced this year. So we went through in the 2022 budget to try to be prudent, and we basically went through and looked at all the requested items, and basically what we do is we have various personnel that handle various aspects of, like, have one of the employees buys all the tracks and buys all the cleaning supplies and things like that for the station. So everyone gets to put in a budget, and then we take that and plug it into the grand budget. And then we went through and just really looked at the items and said, okay, what's an absolute need? What is a must-have, and what is a want? And basically, we took out a lot of the wants. We scrutinized the needs, and we left in the absolute must-haves for the 2022 budget. So, like I said, we don't plan on, in 2022, any capital expenditures. So no vehicles, anything like that for next year, unless, and obviously we would have to come back to you unless suddenly there was some catastrophic event to a vehicle that we suddenly had to deal with. But quite honestly, with what we're hearing from the various vehicle manufacturers, even if we were to suffer a catastrophic event, probably the only option we would have would be to buy a demo vehicle, because getting in line now to build trucks is anywhere to 18 to 20 months right now. So, and it's all, well, most cases it's people buying vehicles, they're still building them, but they're short on staff at the manufacturing facility, which slows down the manufacturing time. And then there's, as we keep hearing all the time, there's supply chain issues. So we've got the ladder truck sitting at a repair shop in Urbana, and we just got notified that it's gonna be probably another 2 weeks to get this one part that we're waiting on to get the ladder truck back in service.
So it can't be in service without that one part?
That's correct.
I'm assuming, yeah.
Yeah, it's, you can't operate the aerial device.
It's kind of important on
Kind of
aerial
important.
truck, isn't it? Yeah. Thanks.
So basically, you know, last year was a little different. I was at home on quarantine and we had to do this, I think it was over the phone. So I'll turn it over to you if you all have questions as far as the 2022 budget.
So Joe, how does this compare? You said, well, I don't know if you said it, 2021. You know, you said there's going to be areas that are less, some that are more. Unless
He just, I asked for it, but it was late last night, so thank you. Because I picked up the paper copy from Paul yesterday and then
What
realized
copy of
it
this?
wasn't a
This is the
comparison.
2021. I can go get a copy of
you
it.
can just go down, I mean, just the areas that are increased. Just do a quick comparison, if
Is
you
that
would.
the same thing that was on this appropriation?
That's the
list?
appropriation report,
Okay.
which if you have the appropriation report, would also show you,
Okay.
Because this was emailed.
that's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So that would also show you what was appropriated for 2021 and then what we've spent. So it's just a different report.
Okay.
Basically.
I see a lot of areas here where you didn't plan for anything last year, but then you have it filled in this year. Is it just because you're refining it? Because last year was kind of your first year, correct?
That's correct. And as I went through what I gave to you this morning, Renee, there's a couple areas that are blank and I don't understand why they're blank. But if you look at your appropriations report, it does show the amount that we appropriated. Like I was looking at the one column in the 2021 proposed budget. I don't know why it's not in there, but it's the property insurance premiums. Well, we pay that every year.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of these are utilities, which I know you pay, so,
Yes.
yeah,
So
okay.
I'm not sure why those don't show up, but I can tell you that
It's what they just approved, so it hasn't been paid this year. It will appear this year, but
Not yet?
you're gonna sign the PO when you go over. So you just approved it, and it'll be paid in the next couple of weeks. So
yeah.
that's why it's showing as a zero.
Right, okay.
So basically, like the one change you'll see, there's nothing under line item 230-0000, which is workers' comp. And I think the reason that shows as a blank is because we got a refund. And
Right.
that was $35,000. So I think when we took that, so all of our budget stuff is linked together on various pages. And I think when we zeroed out what we were going to pay, I think it took it out of what this
Okay.
proposal is. And I apologize for that. I didn't see that this morning. I was just trying to get that printed off this morning for you because I didn't see Paul's email until about 11 last night. So probably
What happened was Renee had requested from the chief for the 2021 information, and she sent the chief and Joe Schaefer an email.
Thank you.
And when chief sent it to me, I
didn't realize
noticed
that.
Joe Schaefer's name, and then I forwarded that to Joe.
Thank you.
I said, I
I'm
think
sorry
she
about
meant
that.
Joe Ponzi.
Yeah, I
so
did. Thank you.
Too many Joes around.
There
so.
are sometimes.
Let me just ask, do we have somewhere a comparison for each department? We did the last time.
Mhm.
We have 2021 that'll show an increase, decrease. So in case a resident wants to see or has a question or whatever, we can show areas where we have had savings. We can show, or reduction, we can show areas where we have increases.
I think probably the easiest way that we would be able to provide that to a resident would be the appropriation report, because what that would show is what we appropriated for 2021.
Right.
And then what we have spent so far.
Right.
And, basically, it's a pretty easy report to read. And it's easily explainable as far as, we budgeted 15, but we've only spent 5, so this next year, we're gonna cut that back to $10,000 because we just didn't see the spending that we anticipated this year. We were a little bit worried coming in the next year. We keep hearing the reports about natural gas. So we increased the natural gas budget next year. Not hearing much about electricity, and I think we've already incurred some of the costs in the gasoline diesel fuel budget line item. And we're a little close this year, but we left that alone. We're just gonna wait and see what the gasoline and diesel does for next year as far as how much money are we gonna need. We're trying to be very cautious in our forecasting to try to keep the budget as realistic as possible is what we thought that we were gonna spend next year. So probably, we again budgeted for BWC, even though we got the refund this year. Haven't heard anything yet as far as if we might anticipate another refund in 2022. I think that comes from the state and the governor's office as far as the refunds go. But we knew that if we didn't, we better make sure we put some money in the BWC fund to make sure we can pay our portion of the premium. Obviously, we know from the last meeting that none of the medical, dental, vision is going to be any increase to the departments and or the employees. So we kept everything status quo there. Basically, bigger changes, if you look at the appropriations report and what we budgeted, probably if you're looking at it, one of the major changes was line item 318, which is our training services. And last year we budgeted $45,000 for training services. And this year we've cut that down to $35,000. And basically we cut down some of those, hey, it'd be really nice to send some people to some of these classes, as opposed to we realistically looked at what do we need to do in 2022. So roughly just under a $10,000 difference in the training services. But basically, most of them that you'll look at were reductions. And again, like I said, no capital expenditure for next year. We don't plan on buying any vehicles for next year. And kind of like we said at the beginning, it's pretty bland.
Yeah, bland's not all bad.
Bland is okay.
Talk a little bit about the EMS expenditure and especially on the revenue side. Are we hitting projected numbers there? How's that going?
Revenue is good. Run numbers are up for this year. The revenue part on the EMS billing is always difficult because it's a matter of when the insurance company pays our billing company, and then when do we see that revenue come back. So as we were talking the other morning, we had a finalized meeting to finish this up for you all. We were looking at the various reports, and it's just funny how one month you'll make we will make $11,000, and then the next month revenue is $33,000. And it's just a matter of how the insurance companies cycle. And sometimes, there's delays where we transport a patient and there's a delay in them processing the bill because they're trying to find how many, if they have one or two insurers, who pays what, how it gets paid. But I think we're on target to be over 200,000 right now. When we look at the monthly average for this year, we were just over $25,000 on an average. So the other day we were at 170 something. So I think that we'll be over 200,000 in EMS billing revenue for this year.
And that was at till the end of August. So
Yeah.
We didn't have September.
We don't have September's numbers yet, which is typical. It takes about 3 weeks for me to get that report.
And then demo of the old police station.
It's not factored anywhere in these. Remember, we were just in a holding pattern.
Well, we're in a holding pattern, but how long are we going to be in a holding pattern? Is this something that we should be thinking about? I mean, we've got some estimates on what it would cost. I think the plan was, if I remember right, that we were probably more inclined to look at a demo as opposed to going in and remodeling, or at least part of it. I mean, should we be having that discussion at this point or not? Because if we don't, it's going to sit there another year, and I think the experience with vacant buildings is they don't improve.
Correct.
So if it's going to happen, first of all, we need to decide, is it going to happen? If it is, what part's going to be demoed? And then third, who's going to pay for it? And I know that there's been discussion about you trying to, browbeat the police chief into it. And he's a pretty tough guy.
He's tough.
And then we talked about maybe just having general fund pick up some, if not all of it, so.
What's the will of the board? I know we basically did the assessment and the analysis of what it would take, but then it said, well, let's hold off, but what do you want to do? I'll just take your direction. If you want to move ahead with a demo, then we can budget money in general fund to cover it.
Before we say demo, weren't you using that as somewhat of a training facility at this point? You talked about going into vacant buildings, et cetera, at a previous.
We have been using it just because it's right next door to us, and it's it's hard to find houses that are, someone comes in and buys a piece of property and they're getting ready to build something or put a subdivision on. Obviously, the closer we get to build out, there's fewer and fewer places that we get the opportunity to go and train in. So we've tried to take advantage of that building as much as possible to train in. I mean, not destroy anything, but to train in doing search and rescue practice, dragging hose lines, pulling the rescue dummy in, limited visibility conditions, et cetera. Brady and I try to make sure, talking about the condition of the building, try to walk through that building a couple times a week to make sure everything's okay, it's still secure, and nothing has broken. We don't have water leaks, roof leaks, et cetera. Just don't want to just turn our back on it and find out that we have a major surprise going on, that if we'd have been in there on a regular basis to address an issue as soon as we find it. So we try to do that. So we're trying to do due diligence to make sure that it doesn't decay or we experience some significant problem that now we're going to have to address. Going back to your original topic, renovate, replace, demolish. I don't remember the demolish fee.
I do.
Do you?
I think we were talking about saving the Sallyport section because it's newer and you could utilize that for whatever. But the cost was around, I think it was 75,000 or so.
I thought the same. I was thinking 80.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can put a placeholder in general fund under capital buildings if you want to consider it next year.
Well, I mean, I think maybe that should be in there for no other reason to remind us that we need to do something, because, I mean, we have a plan. If we don't do anything, that's a plan, and it's going to sit there, and you're going to have to walk through it 2 times a week, and we're going to have, issues with it. So I think some thought needs to be given, not necessarily today, as to what the plan's going to be going forward, but I think if you have a placeholder there, it's at least going to be a reminder that we need to be thinking about it. And I mean, the Sallyport, I think that part that's kind of tied in with it was an area that we had talked about potentially saving, but there was some that we could have gotten rid of. And then the next thing is, okay, what do we do moving forward with additional space for you? Right. And that's the only reason I'm raising the question.
I'll add that into the general fund figure then.
How does that affect your budget for next year? Because you were close to what you'd take in, correct?
No, I was nowhere. I mean,
Weren't-
yes, I have a lot of carryover.
Yeah.
That could cover this.
Okay,
So, yeah, it may put us over what we collect.
that's what I'm asking, yeah.
Yeah, but we can, take it out of carryover if need be.
Okay.
One of the items on your budget, you and I had a nice chat yesterday about this. We went through the things where I looked at what's significantly higher, significantly lower. And one of the things I noticed was the operating supplies for office equipment, that had almost doubled. And as we talked, you had mentioned that these were computers, that some of our computers were ancient, very old. And so, we talked about putting them on, kind of like you have the vehicle replacement, a computer replacement schedule. That's something that I would like to suggest, not only for fire, but throughout the entire township. If we don't have that in place already, we need to get these types of things on a replacement schedule. Printers, computers, et cetera.
Sure.
So,
So, they're not large line item things, they're relatively minor, but we've got a couple that we've identified, and as I told you yesterday, one of them that has proved to be troublesome here recently is the computer that we use in the training room, and we use that a lot, and we can't afford for that to fail, so we need to get that replaced, and we've got a couple other older machines, but we did also replace a couple machines this year, just because they were on the verge of failure. Actually, Fire Marshal Cato's, thankfully, his stuff was, he had the blue, as we call it, the blue screen of death, and we were able to recover what he had on his desktop and then get him a new machine and get him back up and running, and I think we replaced the BC's computer this year because they were having continual problems of, when they went to open certain applications, it would just shut down it would just turn the computer off, and we're like, we just can't afford this time loss. So we did address a couple of the machines this year, but plan on doing a couple of them next year. And Connie, you had asked yesterday also about building repairs was a decrease from last year to this year, and the reason for that being was last year, and we're currently doing it right now, we had budgeted $5,000 to renovate the women's shower in the bathroom. We were beginning to did have a mold problem in that shower. Of course, it's 20 years old, and did our best to try to mitigate that, but we were not winning. So we put that in the budget for this year, and we just kind of held on to it to make sure we didn't have anything emergent come up that we needed those funds. We got to this point, and Battalion Chief Schieber got hold of a contractor, and we got them in there, and I don't know, I didn't walk in there this morning, but they're probably greater than 50% done. Okay, so we're almost complete, and it worked out pretty well because Lieutenant Holtzberry is on vacation out of town, so we didn't have to worry about where she was going to shower at, although we had a contingency plan for that. But the timing worked out rather well as far as when we could get the contractor in, and Allison's not here, so we haven't had any worries there. So it's worked out pretty well. So that's a decrease from last year to this year. We have talked about maybe reworking the front workstation area. The countertop is delaminating, falling apart, and we need to upgrade that and see if we can make that workspace a little more user-friendly and a better workstation space, because that's where sometimes, obviously Lisa is there, 8 hours a day, but we also have 2 computers up there that the employees can do various work on, and we just want to update that and try to make it a more accommodating workspace. So,
You budgeted.
yeah.
Are you going to redesign it or just?
We don't know yet. I'll
Okay.
be very honest with you.
Okay, well,
what
I'm
we're
glad
wait-
you're looking into it.
What we're waiting on is we reached out to the contractor that redid the kitchen because, basically it's a countertop and that wall. But we want to, like right now, Lisa has some really old metal filing cabinets stuffed underneath the counter. And we said, well, if we're going to redo this, wouldn't it be nice if we built in cabinets so that she would actually have some sort of nice storage space and other areas throughout that work area where we could keep, books and all the binders that we have just sitting on top of the countertop. Again, just to make it a better workspace. But we're waiting for him to show up to give us some conceptual ideas of where we can go with it. So he's busy, he's short on staff, so we're at the mercy of waiting for him to show up.
Are there any ADA requirements on that? I know when you go to the bank or whatever, they have one section of the counter that is lower for perhaps a wheelchair access, a visitor coming into the reception area. Are there any guides that we need to follow when we do that?
I wouldn't imagine that we'd have to meet anything for ADA because we have the ADA restrooms, which is the front restroom.
Right.
But as far as being that that's an employee workspace, I don't know as far as why we would have to comply ADA on a workspace, like having a lower cabinet or counter height or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I guess I was questioning, as people come in, it is also a reception area. And for someone coming in, talking to whoever is working there, if the counter's really high, that might be.
I see that point. And we could ask that question.
Just something to be aware of if we're going to redo it anyway. Make sure we're compliant.
Sure.
And even if some employee you hire or the existing do end up with a disability, we're covered. If being in a wheelchair or any kind of scenario would be helpful both ways for both the employee side and the resident side. If you need any design help, we can send Donna Batten over. She did a nice job with this facility.
You've been trying to move her down to my building
I don't say you could have her.
for over a year now.
You can take over some of her design skills, so.
So, does the board have any questions about the budget?
No?
We're good, Joe.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Gamble.
Good morning. You should have a copy of my appropriation request there. Just a little disclaimer, I found it very challenging to do this budget with only 9 months basically worth of expenditures to look at. So a lot of, for example, utilities, medical costs, just guessing that. And I know like with my medical costs, a lot of those expenditures come in this last quarter of the year. Same with salaries. I know we have holiday pay coming up. I don't know what that's going to be. So to try to do that, typically we do this in December. So some of these numbers may look a little odd. But I'll go through and try to highlight some of the changes and then answer any questions you have. Of course, our biggest category is salaries. The salaries reflect the 2% raise for union employees. They also reflect that we added 2 new sergeants positions, bumping 2 officers to sergeants. And we also added 2 additional officers positions, which we have yet to hire, but we're in the process of interviewing people. So that's reflected in the salaries. I increased our public employee retirement system contribution. Looking at my current status right now, I'm at 99.7% spent with 3 months left in the year, and I'm not sure why that is because it's never been like that. I talked to Donna, and she said she was crediting some money back there to that account that had been mistakenly credited, I think, to another department. So, but I did bump that up a little bit, just looking at where we're at, because I don't know where it's going to go. I increased our medical based on where we are as the end of September. Originally, and I'm looking at the appropriation status that I got from, it's dated 12/31/2021, which is incorrect. It's the it should be 12/31/2020, which shows the final appropriation for 2021, and my appropriation for medical hospital was $564,591. I had originally started at $566. And if you look at today's appropriation status, it shows my final appropriation for medical is $430,000. I'm not sure why that is. So, but again, I know that our medical costs will increase the remainder of the year. I've had a couple people with recent surgeries that are going to bump that up, and typically our medical costs increase at the end of the year as everybody's hit their deductibles. So that's why I put it in there at $550,000, which is actually a decrease from what I had appropriated for 2021 at the beginning of the year. One category I know you have questions about is repairs and maintenance buildings. I combined our 2021 budget for repairs and maintenance buildings into one. I left the same amount of money in there for 2022, which may sound odd since we have a new building. A couple things with that. We do have, and we've talked in the past about potentially expanding the parking lot to add more parking spaces. I know we've had several classes and meetings there already, which have kind of filled up our parking lot. And if we have any events there, it's going to really fill the parking lot. So we do have potential to expand that parking lot. I don't have a specific cost on what that's going to cost. We did have an unexpected cost in the last couple of months where we had to replace some of the blacktop that was laid down, and I think that was about another $10,000 to $12,000. And then the other thing is, I just get a little nervous, even with a new building, with all the huge mechanical systems, electrical systems we have, the server room we have, all of that's under warranty. Some of those warranties may expire after a year. I asked the architect for what the warranties were on everything. He says, well, those are in the owner's manuals. So now I have to go find the owner's manuals and read through to find out the specifics. And I don't have that. But I did want to leave some money in there just in case something unexpected comes up. Electricity, I bumped it by $2,000. Right now we're at 95% on that category. And I may need to add a little bit more to this year's appropriation because we just didn't know going into the year what our electricity costs were going to be. It looks like it's averaging about $2,000 a month, but obviously there's months where you use more electric and there's months where you use less electric. So not really sure there, but it's a slight increase. Again, and I talked to Connie about this, my natural gas request may be low. I'm hearing, and I hadn't been paying too much attention to it, the cost may be going up, but I really don't know what that could be at this point. One area that I decreased was dues and fees. We had a leads machine, a leads terminal that we paid about $9,000 a year for, and we determined that we really didn't need that leads terminal. We could still do every function of leads without the actual terminal. So we gave it back to the Highway Patrol. It's not impacted our ability to run any of our leads capabilities. If you look at the budget, my overall increase from 2021 to 2022 is $161,613. So it's a slight increase. Again, the factor of that is mainly the salaries. It does maintain our current vehicle replacement schedule of replacing 2 cruisers, and I think this is helpful if you look at our vehicle maintenance costs, year after year they've gone down by maintaining a fleet where we replace 2 cruisers per year. Also getting rid of all of our Dodge Chargers, which were lemons and just sucked money out of our repair schedule. So that's good. Our gasoline cost, I've not seen a big impact. I know gasoline's going up at the pumps. But if you look at ours right now, we're at 60% for the year that we've spent. So I left it the same. Again, with inflation, who knows what's going to happen in the next year, but right now it looks like we're okay there. Again, a couple things. 86% of our budget is fixed costs between salaries and benefits. So there's 14% that we're dealing with that's discretionary funding. Looking at our revenues, our 2022 revenues are projected to be down by $315,177. That's a product of the reduction in millage from 4.6 to 4.2. This was anticipated, entirely expected. And when I look at my Levy projections all the way out to the end of this levy, I'm still in good shape. In fact, I project that I'll be above the 50% anticipated carryover at the end of the levy. So even with the reduction there and the slight increase, it's not impacting our levy funding for the remainder of the levy. The other part is we had built that levy funding to hire a new officer in 2022 and a new officer in 2024. We've now changed that because you authorize adding the 2 positions now because we have good candidates and we know that we have some retirements coming up. So that kind of changes a little bit, but even plugging that in, it doesn't impact the levy at the end of the levy. So I'm still in good shape there. So those are the highlights. Be happy to answer any questions.
Chief, I would assume one of the issues with the OPERS is with the new staff and with the increase in salary for some of the staff.
Right.
That's going to
And
trickle through.
that could be it.
Yeah.
And you know, that's probably
Which is-
something we just didn't project correctly.
Just have to factor that in. Questions? Steve?
Go ahead.
I don't, yeah, I think you did a thorough review. Thank you.
You and I talked about this yesterday, and everything that I asked you hit on, so we're good.
Steve, one thing we might want to think about, and I don't know legally if we can do it, you know, if it does look like the carryover is going to be increasing a little more than we had anticipated, and it may have to have Pat or someone remind me on the financing of the building and the bonds. Is there, basically what I'm thinking, is there a way to expedite paying off the bonds?
I'm not an expert on that, but I would think since we couldn't use any of our levy funds for the building of the building because of the way it was worded in the levy levy ballot, that I don't know if you can then use those levy funds on the bond for the building, but that would be a Pat question.
Yeah.
I don't believe that you're allowed
Okay.
to do that.
So we can't pay it down quicker
No,
than
and not unless the bond levy fund
stated.
has extra money due to maybe for some odd reason.
Okay.
One of the other things I was just going to bring up, because everybody's mentioned cybersecurity and the IT stuff and the computers. I think we need to probably look at doing a position for a township IT administrator. I know to do all the internal stuff. I know I have an officer that does all of our internal stuff, and he's working on it every single day. And it's coming to a point where he's close to retirement, and also I think he's desiring to stop doing that. So our body cameras, our internal computers, our systems inside, working with our network and records management system, are a lot of the things he works on. I'm sure they have the same issues. And I would be willing to pay for a portion of that person's salary out of our levy funds if that's legal, but I just think we need to look at it with so much of our, you know, we're all electronic, we're all computerized over there. So having somebody maintain that on top of what the county does, because the county's not going to be there on a daily basis doing the things we need. When I call up Mike Riley and say, Mike, my printer's not working, and he comes right over and helps me.
Well,
Just a
along those
thought.
same lines, I mean, I think the other challenge we have with having that kind of a setup where you have your stuff, Joe, you have
Right.
yours, is the same thing we've run into in the past, where all of a sudden you're operating on a whole different system than everyone else in the township, and we're, you know, making up programs and designing stuff, and then it breaks down and we're in a problem.
Well, a lot of this too is like, we use the county's sheriff's records management system. They just changed over to a new system this year. And it's those kind of things, but maintaining that is something that our guy inside does on a daily basis and does the training for that. So that's a lot of work in itself, and I'm sure you have some of the same issues.
I have personally enjoyed the county IT service here. They've been very responsive. If we do have a repair or something, if they can work on it remotely, they do it, and there's no bill for up to 15 minutes, and a lot of time it's just keyboard, it's fixed. But we've had instances when they've been on site assisting when there's been, like for our fiscal office, had some programming glitches. But I've been very happy with the service they provided. But I don't have nearly all the electronic devices that you have. So I think we've saved a lot of money by going to county IT. I think the numbers showed that we've had probably close to a 50% reduction in IT. But that's my point of view, and I'm sure Joe has some thoughts, Joe and Brady.
Well, actually, pretty lucky we kind of have the lead IT guy with us here this morning. So I don't know if Brady has an opinion. I would agree with what Paul says. In most cases, the county has been pretty responsive to our request for assistance. Now that we're on their system, it's helped a lot with them being able to remote in and fix things. And there's been cases where they have to come out and set, like when we get the new computers, they have to come out and get them up on their domain, I think is the correct term. But it may be something worth at least further discussion. Do we need a person that could support us internally? But there again, I think they have probably the largest IT need, especially with the body cameras, dash cams, all that stuff.
And our citations are electronic when
Maybe
it's
more than
working.
us.
I mean, I think it's something definitely to keep in mind. Again, I go back to, I think we just have to be careful internally developing specific. You have a customization needs, you do as well, and just making sure that if we're going to develop something, that it's something that county or someone says, yeah, that's the way to do it, and so it doesn't wreck something else, or that we can address it in the future if we have to replace it, or
Yeah, and
because
most of
we
ours-
got into-
most of ours is not internally created
Yeah.
programs or anything. It's
because we
Just
got
a
into some
product of
programs, if I remember right, that were proprietary, and we couldn't do anything unless we went through that same vendor for add-ons, and, you know, once they get you, they get you. And so you just have to be cautious for that. But, I mean, I think it's something.
just a thought, but that's my budget. It's my appropriations.
Anything else? Any questions?
I just have a question for the chief. If you added on to your parking lot, just out of curiosity, how would you do it?
There's a section on the northwest that we had plotted out in the planning where there was room for expansion. I can't remember the exact number of spots, but it was maybe up to a dozen,
Okay,
but there is some room to expand there without going into the pond.
okay, thank you.
I think there was an area, are you talking about your Sallyport doors over that side?
There's some over there too, but if in that northwest portion, it can be bumped out a little bit.
Just kind of a general question, just kind of thought. You know, we have had, and we still are, I think, a lot of COVID-related funding coming in, both state and federal. Have we made sure that we aren't using that money as a replacement for what we normally would budget? Have we taken all of that type of stuff into account, and have we utilized COVID money to the maximum so that we don't have to spend our own revenue?
Yeah,
I
we
just throw
have.
that out as.
The CARES Act money, yes, we used it where we could. We reimbursed EMS and things for those items, anything documentable. And yes, we did use that, and most of it was used to supplement the salary side on the police and fire. But that money, the CARES Act money's all gone. We're still, like I said at the last budget meeting, we're still waiting on Treasury guidance on what we could use for budget things for the next set that they sent us.
I mean, I think we just have to be cautious, and I'm sure you guys took it into account, that we weren't operating on a daily basis on COVID money and saying, hey, now we have a surplus in this area, or how are we going to pay for that same expense when COVID money, CARES Act money is gone. So I'm assuming that was taken into account. I'm sure it was, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. You know, the CARES Act money's gone. We've spent that.
Okay.
So the only thing that we're waiting on now is the American Rescue Plan and some further instruction of what we're going to be able to reimburse out of our expenses. And we're just waiting on that information to trickle down to us. Eagerly awaiting.
Yeah.
That would be a welcome influx of funds.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Paul, anything else we need to?
No, that's all I have today.
deal with? Well, very good. We appreciate the efforts. So this will be put together and will be available as one township budget in the next week or two.
Yes.
Okay. And so we won't have to take any more action on it at this point. Okay. Anything else? Hearing none, I'll move to adjourn the meeting at 9:19 a.m. Is there a second?
Second?
Second, discussion, roll call.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.